In today's conversation, I'm going to show you that a small shift in your perspective can lead to the big changes that you've always wanted to make for yourself. I went back to school in my late 20s for technically it was broadcast journalism, but it was mostly I just wanted to do sports broadcasting. So I did a lot of radio, sports radio. I did a lot of play-by-play and broadcasting of games on air talent. But in my free time, one of the things that I would do is I would work as a cameraman for all the other events. And so I would make a little bit of money by working a camera. And before the event or the game would start, the director would go around and he would make sure all the cameramen had their shot and that they were in focus. So everybody would have a specific shot. Maybe it was the end zone if you were doing football, or maybe it was the goalie or one specific area of the goal. Maybe it was the away team or the home team. And you would have this specific shot that you would be focused on. And if you were out of focus, the director would say a phrase that would be, "Hey, camera 2, make sure that you rack focus." Now, it's also known as focus pulling. And what you do is you have a focus point. So if I'm focused on the end zone, maybe I'm going to look at a flag that isn't going to move in the end zone, and that's my focus point. So I'm going to zoom all the way into this flag, get my focus there, and then I'm going to zoom out slowly until I reach the desired shot where everything in the shot is in focus. And that focus point, anytime if the camera gets bumped or I lose focus, I can always zoom back in on that flag, get the focus, and then come back out, and I'm always going to be in focus. It really was a great life lesson because it helped me develop the understanding that you need to be able to rack focus in life. You need to be able to zoom in on something and find your focus. You need a focus point or a focal point that you can zoom in on and find your focus. But that needs to be something that doesn't move. That needs to be something that you can revisit and go back to and redo. So I think a lot of people are great at zooming in on something and they focus on something. And they are told on the internet a million different ways of how to focus on their life, their diet, their dating, their exercise, their mental health, their friends, their family, their school, their objectives, their career, everything. If you are worried about, I don't know what to focus on, open the internet. The internet will tell you. Now, I don't agree with everything that the internet says, but I do agree that the fact that the internet is a great, great tool to help you learn that, you know what, if you don't have focus or you're not sure what to focus on, there's plenty of resources out there at your fingertips that are going to help you gain at least direction, right? So if you want to do one thing or another, it's going to give you a starting point. It's going to give you an idea. It's going to give you a focal point. What a lot of people do is they take that focal point and it's a moving focal point, right? So if you ask a 5-year-old, "Hey, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And they say, "I'm not an astronaut. I want to be an astronaut." And then you ask that same 5-year-old who grows up 10 years and is now 15 and is in love with girls and his girlfriend really likes a football player. Guess what that 5-year-old is going to say? He's probably going to say, "I want to now play football." Why? Because perspectives and things change in our lives. Desires change in our lives. But sometimes people will kind of do the same thing with the focal points, is they'll attach it to something that's ever moving and ever changing. But I learned a really good lesson when you're running a camera and you're doing rack focus. If my focal point, I remember one time my focal point was this, it was just a cooler on the away side, the away team. It was a cooler. And I remember I focused in on that cooler and I bumped my camera and I was so focused that just the slightest movement moved me off, and I was still so zoomed in, I had no idea where I was, and I was moving left and right and up and down, and I could not find that cooler anymore. So I had to zoom back out, and I realized I was looking at a little box of black tape that was about a foot from the cooler. But because I was so zoomed in, I couldn't tell where I was, and I couldn't tell that every single movement that I was making it worse and worse and worse until I zoomed out, understood where I was, got my surroundings, got my bearings, and then I zoomed back in on that focal point, got my focus, then zoomed out to my shot. We do this sometimes in our lives where we will focus on something that's moving. If you try to focus on somebody, right? Maybe a person or, a specific moving item. If you're watching a sport, if you're focusing only on the football, it makes it hard because that's constantly moving, or soccer ball, it's constantly moving. And so you have to find things that are very consistent. And that's where I find a lot of people struggle. It's because a lot of people will focus really well, but they focus on things that they can never refocus on, or that it's really hard to find. And in order to find it, you have to kind of zoom back out to what is your goal. And this is why I want to ask you is, in your surroundings right now and the people that are around you and everything that's going on in your life, I can probably guarantee that it doesn't feel great at times. And I can probably guarantee that it sometimes feels like chaos. You may be going through a breakup. You may be going through something that's extremely difficult. You may have just lost your job. You may have failed a test in school. I'm not sure, but we all go through these things. I think sometimes we need to rack focus. And in order to understand what our focal point is, we need to find our focal point. Now, for me, that focal point is Jesus, and it's my faith. And I'm very open and honest about it. And I will always talk about it because it's something that I can't share my life and what I've gone through and experienced without being able to share certain lessons and things that I've learned through scripture and through what he's done in my life and how he's impacted. But the beautiful thing about Jesus is he's actually my focal point, and he never changes. It never moves. It never, like, you can read the Bible today and you can read the Bible 5 years ago. And you can read the Bible 20 years ago, and the messages of Jesus are still going to be the same thing. There's a message of joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness. So for me, that's what my focal point is. Now, I'm not saying you have to have that same focal point. I always invite people and encourage people to have that focal point, but it's not my prerogative to say, nope, you have to do this. This is your choice. But that's my focal point. It doesn't move. So whenever I lose focus and whenever things start getting haywire, and sometimes things will get out of focus and I don't know where my focal point is in my life, I revisit scripture. I start praying or meditating again. I start focusing on my focal point, the thing that I know is not going to move. Now, my challenge to you is, what is your focal point? What is the thing that you're able to zoom in on and understand that's not going to move? That 5 years from now, that same thing is going to be there. Some people, it's their parents. Some people, it's just how their parents raised them. It's the worldview and the understanding and the love and the joy and the just the excitement of, my dad was everything for me. That's my focal point. I want to make my dad proud. Other people, it may be a teacher that they had in school that really impacted them, and they know that this specific teacher, that's their focal point. What would they do in this situation? Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe there are people in your life that you've used as a focal point that have actually moved on. And so now you're without a focal point. You're like, well, I used to have this person, but now I don't have anybody. And it's time for you to learn and find a new focal point so you can focus on what is your goal, and then find a focal point inside of that goal. Maybe it's career, maybe it's a specific relationship or a growth in a relationship. Maybe it's repairing something that's going on with your family. Maybe it's repairing relationships with friends. Maybe it's, just getting a new job or starting a new career. Or maybe you're afraid to go back to school because it's later in life. As somebody who did that in my late 20s, it's a very scary thing. But now that I have some time and I can look back, and my hindsight, of course, is 2020. But what I've found is sometimes our hindsight is much better than 20. It's 2015. Sometimes it's even 2010, where we can see everything so much better through the perspective of, oh, I've actually experienced this. Because we know how to zoom in and zoom out, and we can see it from a little bit more distance. Because when it's happening, we're so zoomed in. And sometimes it feels like the world's on fire. Sometimes it feels like this hurts really, really bad. Sometimes it feels like I don't want to do this anymore. Or I don't know if I can do this anymore. And maybe you feel that way. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that I've felt that way. I've felt that way recently. It's been a very strange year for me. But I know my focal point, and I really hope that you'll find yours, because it helps you regain focus and rack focus and zoom in, catch your breath, and then zoom out to see the whole picture. There's a old black and white actor named Charlie Chaplin that said that life is a tragedy when seen in close up, but a comedy in long shot. And I think the older I get, the more I resonate with that quote, because when it's happening, most of us will feel like everything around us is falling apart. It's chaos, and it hurts, and it's frustrating, and I don't like this. It doesn't feel good. But then you look a couple years later, and you look back on it, and you laugh, and you say, actually, this is the story that I'm going to share, right? This is the story I'm going to tell people, and I can laugh about it. And we get really focused on little pieces of it, right? Almost like a puzzle piece that's just fire, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, we get so focused on this little puzzle piece, and we're like, this is what's happening right now. Everything is on fire. And we don't think about what the entire puzzle looks like at the end. And what we could find out is that it's really just a small campfire around this beautiful moment with an awesome sunset and a campfire and people that we love and appreciate. But we're looking at, oh, this piece is just fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's going downhill. We're all going to burn. It's terrible. Might as well just end it. But as you put the puzzle piece together, you start realizing that that's one small piece. That's one small piece. That's one small piece. Oh, there's an actual picture here. And we see that bigger picture, and what feels like the ending of the world ends up being that story that we share with a smile saying, I made it through that. Honestly, it was silly, or honestly, it was wild, or honestly, I can't believe I made such a big deal out of this. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've said, I can't believe how foolish I was. I wish I didn't say it as much as I have, but I made some really, really dumb mistakes in my 20s. I made some really, really dumb choices in my 20s. I made some really unique choices in my 20s as well. I'm not even going to call them dumb. They were just unique choices that took me into a completely different space that I ever thought I would go in, which led me to the skills that I picked up along the way, which led me to my job now, which led me into the human that I am. And I love the person that I am. I love the person I'm becoming. And I don't think I could ever change anything. But there's moments where you have to zoom in on a focal point and then zoom back out and see the full picture. And every once in a while, it may behoove us to actually zoom as far out as we can to see all the surroundings as well, to see everything going on, to see what's happening in your friends' lives and in your family's lives. And maybe you have a spouse or a loved one, or, you know, a special friend or a mentor or a coworker that means a lot to you. Maybe you're in a place where you can zoom out even farther and say, they need to know that they're doing so much better than they tell themselves. We all need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. I firmly believe that. But there's probably people in your life right now that you are thinking about as you're listening to this podcast that need to hear from you and need to hear you say, you are doing a good job. I'm so proud of you. You'd be amazed on what that type of impact will bring to somebody who's so focused that every micro movement makes them get farther and farther and more lost and confused. And that moment might help them go, oh, really? Yeah, just zoom out. Just zoom out a little bit. And they may be all worked up and I can't, no, I'm not doing well. I this and this. Hey, let's zoom out. Let me show you what I see. Come out to this view. Because what I see is growth. And I see somebody who is passionate and somebody who wants to be a better person, who wants to be better in their career, wants to be better in their marriage, wants to be better in their relationships. I see somebody who is trying to learn. When everybody else is telling them you can't, they're trying to find a way how to do it. And they're pushing through. And even though they feel like they're failing, or maybe they have failed, they need to be reminded that it's not final. Failure is not final. Failure is just another stepping stone along the way to learning how to be better and better and better. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll never stop saying it. But this podcast was bred out of the ideas and the conversations that I have in my mind. And I would have these conversations over and over on the way to work or on the way to the gym or on the way to wherever I was going. Or sometimes it would be on the way home or in my bed at night. And I would have these conversations. And I just refuse to believe that I'm the only one who has these conversations. I think they're valuable conversations because they remind me of my focus point, of my focal point, of what keeps me in line, what keeps me in focus, what keeps me from losing my place and frantically reaching out and trying to find something new, only to be disappointed by those things because it's not what I actually believe I'm supposed to do. And my guess is you've probably done some things that you know you weren't supposed to do, and not in a sense of shame on you, but in a sense of you went down a path and then you wondered, this isn't what I wanted. I never wanted this. Let's get back on the path and go towards something that we actually want. I want to be known as somebody who is trustworthy. I want to be known as somebody who is kind. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be hurtful. I want to be somebody who's kind and loving and wise, and somebody who has a job where I can be able to give more. I want to be somebody who is known as that person who is the light of the room. When they walk in, people are excited to see me. Not the person who, when they walk in, they start going, oh my gosh, I can't believe Kyle's here. Because I've been those people. I've been on both sides. Where I've been the person who, when I walked into a room, people were like, oh my gosh, Kyle's here. And I've been somebody who, when I walk in the room, people are like, yay, Kyle's here. And I can tell you this, I don't want to ever be the smartest person in the room. I will, however, fight to be the kindest person in the room, because I can guarantee people will remember kindness over intelligence. People will say, yeah, that person was really smart. But people will say, man, Kyle made me feel seen. Kyle made me feel heard. I want to talk to Kyle again. That's going to do it for this conversation. This has been a really, really weird year, and I appreciate each and every one of you for listening to the podcast. I hope that you'll share it with a friend, maybe somebody who needs to rack focus and see that they are doing much better than they think they are, or that they're telling themselves. Maybe you need to re-listen to this podcast down the road. So I hope that you will. I hope that you'll share it. Make sure that you like and subscribe and all that good stuff. It really does help out the podcast, and it helps the growth of the podcast, which I am trying to be as consistent as possible. Mind you, there's a lot going on in my life still, but I am trying to be as consistent as possible for you guys, because I love you and I love these conversations. And I love the opportunity to share all of this. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Remember to give grace, show love, and as always, stay stellar. Peace.